Welcome to Laugh, Cry, IEP, the podcast for moms with neurodivergent kids by Victoria Crisp. Victoria is a special education consultant and advocate with 20 years of experience on the school side and 5 additional years on your side. This is your journey, but you are not alone. Here, you'll learn, you'll be understood, and you'll find community. In fact, we'd love to have you join us in the Laugh Cry IEP community on Facebook. We'll tell you how at the end. Now, here's your host, Victoria Crisp.
Hi, Eileen. Thank you so much for coming today and talking to me about your story.
Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. So we started working together last year.
Yeah, last fall, like September, October.
Yeah. And would you like to tell me and our listeners what was happening when we connected about this issue?
Yeah. So my daughter is in first grade. She's always been a little bit of a wild child and always been very stubborn, but I just kind of thought that's just how she was. Preschool, there wasn't really an issue. You know, COVID happened halfway through her first year. Her second year was really weird because it was masked and everything. And so kindergarten was a little bit of an adjustment. Didn't really think anything of it. She did have some behavior issues in class, but nothing that was totally I don't know, troublesome. No, I wasn't worried.
No major alarms were going off.
No major alarms were going off. I just thought she's just having trouble.
And she is the third in the birth order.
Yes.
So she's the baby.
Yeah. So I just thought she's just a brat. But also she's just feisty and that's just how she is.
The first girl.
First girl. Yeah. And so I didn't really think anything of it. I noticed in the summer, between kindergarten and first grade, her behavior started getting really crazy. She's never been a great sleeper. She always takes a long time to settle down. Now knowing what I know, things make so much more sense. But she's always been a kid that kind of gets really overstimulated, needs a quiet space, needs to kind of quietly go by herself for a little bit. And so I just never really thought I don't know. I just never really thought much of it because she's kind of like me, which that's another story. So I was just oh, she just gets overwhelmed sometimes or whatever. But I noticed in the summer, her behavior just started getting out of control.
Can you describe an incident or a time that you remember that what was that? What did that look like?
Just getting gosh, I don't even know.
She was wilding out.
Just wild, feral in a sense, which is crazy because she thinks she's a wolf. So this is all making sense now. But she just, was just a little, I don't know how to describe it. Just
where were you? Can you think of a time where were you when you were just oh my God, what is this behavior?
Just if things didn't go exactly the way she wanted. So if she was playing with friends and the friend wasn't playing the exact way she wanted, she would just freak out and start screaming and just really just so rigid in her thoughts and just not, flexible at all of oh, okay, yeah, we can play it that way. It was no, we're playing it this way. And then, sometimes she would lash out. She would maybe hit, just kind of just crazy in a sense, just craziness. And like I said, her sleeping was off. She wasn't sleeping great the whole summer. So school started, first week or so was okay. And then as she started getting more comfortable, I think it was just really hard for her. Kindergarten is a little bit more flexible. First grade, it's more you are sitting a little bit more. It's more structured, a little bit more. I mean, nothing crazy, but she had a really hard time with the structured sitting. So then, pretty early on, I would say in September, we realized something else was going on. We were getting calls almost every day from school.
Yeah, say more about that because this is your story is how it goes down.
Yeah. So I started getting calls like every day. Eleanor was out of control today. She lost her temper. She was screaming. She was hiding under her desk. And she wouldn't come out. She was whipping around a blanket.
Oh, right. Wasn't she like gravely injured, like several classmates? And then we were like, wait a second. She's like weighs 35 pounds and there was one blanket involved. Yeah. Yeah. You thought she had committed a mass murder.
Yeah. Yeah. You would think she would have hurt.
You were so upset. And I was like, wait, what happened?
A blanket.
Inappropriate usage of a blanket or something? Unsafe. Use of the blanket.
Actions with a blanket.
All right.
So yeah, just like some things that I was like, really? Okay. And then other things I was like, okay, like she's making a scene, she's crying, she's screaming. I can't even like think of some of them now, to be honest.
Right.
Some of the instances because I think I've blocked them out.
Right.
Yeah. But it was like almost every day. And I work full time. And so they weren't calling my husband, they were calling me. And I'm getting interrupted in my workday for situations that they're handling that are not, honestly, most of them were not that big. They were like, she was being unsafe with a blanket. She wouldn't come in from recess. Now that is something that I'll talk about maybe a little bit, but like a lot of the times she's in her own little world in recess and she actually doesn't hear when people are just shouting at her. Now, this is all things we know now, right? And so just like little things that like, we're just like, well, she wouldn't come in. She did this. I will say there were some instances that were really bad where they said she kicked the teacher. And I was like, oh, that's not.
And the teacher is like
an angel.
No, Snow White.
Like she's the most beautiful,
lovely,
precious, like
good teacher, lovely human being.
Perfect. And so I was like, oh my God, like she's out of control. So, this is just daily. And so every day and then I'm anxious. And then the days that I don't get the call, I've just been waiting all day for the call. And so I realized pretty quickly, like, okay, something's going on. Now I reached out to the psychologist who, my two older boys now see as well. All of my kids are neurodivergent in some way. I have one kiddo who has anxiety pretty severely. So we've been seeing our psychologist for quite a few years now. My other son actually just got diagnosed this past spring with ADHD and anxiety. And then so I had her start seeing my daughter back in the fall. And so she saw her for a while. She was not quick to diagnose. Like she really wanted to get to know her. And I believe it was like towards the end of the summer that we had already called her. So it was even before school really got that bad. And so we, she had mentioned, definitely anxiety, probably ADHD.
Yeah.
And possibly autism spectrum disorder.
Did she come up with that first?
She came up with those first, but said she was not ready to diagnose.
Oh, it was the rule out.
It was to rule out.
Gotcha. Okay, that's.
And we also looked into ODD, like oppositional defiancy. We looked into. I feel like there was another one we looked into that she was like, no, I don't think it's that. And when she said autism, I was like, no, right? Like my daughter is so empathetic and like just affectionate and it's not all the things that I think typically what people think
because all of the research was done on boys.
Yes, like it's just so different. So
doesn't even resemble the autism that you think of.
Doesn't.
Now there's like level 1, which is like very mild. So we've really changed all of the descriptors for that. So it's hard for people to identify because unless you're like an expert, like a literal autism expert, you might not know it for a little bit.
Yeah.
At what point did we start working together in this process? Was this like, are you already into when we started working together? Or was this like after?
I think it was the end of September. I called you and I was like, I don't know what to do. She's definitely going to need an IEP. I don't know how to do this process because my son before was on 504, which is I don't think any process is easy, but it was like a little bit more straightforward than an IEP process. I had no clue what to do. I told you what we kind of thought the diagnoses were, but we weren't 100% sure at that time. And so I think I called it, I think like, if I look back up, I feel like it was like September 27th or something like that we finally got like the paperwork signed. We met with the special ed coordinator. We said we wanted like electronic copies because that's the other thing. They'll try to say, well, we'll mail it to you, which literally could take 5 days to get to you.
A lot longer than
that. By the time they get you the paperwork, then you sign it and then send it back. But like, these are all things I wouldn't have known. Like, I think in the meeting, they were like, we're just going to mail it to you. And I'm like, okay. And then Victoria's like, no, you're going to electronically send it today and we're going to sign it today. And I was like the things I just didn't know because and I'm a former teacher. So like, I've been on the other end of this, but I was like a general ed teacher. So like, I would go to some meetings here and there as like the general ed teacher for the meeting. But I never like have experienced this as a parent, and it is so different.
Yeah.
And it's such a long process.
Yeah. But now looking back on it, I think when you're in it, it feels
forever
long,
because every day you're getting phone
yes
of she did this today, this happened. And you're just sitting there going, oh my gosh, I'm doing everything I can.
What is your perspective when you look back on it now? Does it seem like, oh, that actually was moving fast? Or in your head, does it still feel like it took
I feel like it took forever.
Really?
It does. But I didn't feel as like alone. It's a really isolating thing to go through. Like, you feel like you're the only parent that has this child that's like, the way, I will say, no one at the school said she was out of control, but the way they reported things back to me just sounded like she's out of control. We don't know what to do with her. And it was like, I signed for the IEP. Like, we're going through it. They're doing the testing. You know, the school has to have all that time to do the testing. We're doing all the things. I don't know why you're still calling me every day.
Right. And I think that, you were very open and honest, and you were like, talk to everybody. I will sign all the releases because I like to kind of like get into the case.
Yeah.
I like talk to every single person.
Yeah.
And
so
like,
I had you like talking to the psychologist, talking to the school psychologist.
Yes.
Yep.
Because I was like, because I like to, because my background is in actually like, is in education as an educator and director. I like to get in and be one of the people that's figuring out what's going on, especially when it's a confusing, we're not totally sure from the start, like what it might be. And I think I might have had an inclination at some point that we might be looking at autism but in a girl, so it doesn't look the same way. And she is also super smart and super funny and really doesn't have any of the initial or hallmark characteristics that you think of when you talk about a child with autism. So it was going to be really confusing. But then there were enough characteristics that I was like, the rigidity, the kind of living in a fantasy world stuff, having her own like very strong interests in very specific areas, that I was, I was curious enough about looking into that more.
Yeah.
Okay. So they are calling you every day.
Yeah.
This is at the beginning, because every day, and this is what happens with parents too, is that you're so overwhelmed and it's your child.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh my God, like this is happening to me personally, but also it's interrupting my life, and I'm worried about it interrupting my job, and like, how am I supposed to leave work, and what am I supposed to do? And I've done everything. And like, what else could I be doing?
Yeah.
You're doing all of the things that you're supposed to be doing. They're still calling you. And do you remember any of the advice that I gave you?
Don't answer.
Tell them, like, you are welcome to send me a daily email.
And so I tried that on my own, if you recall. And I tried saying, like, put it in an email, like, and at the end of the day, tell me, or at the end of the week, and tell me everything that's been going on. Because I think they were trying to be over communicative with me for various reasons. But they were trying to just always let me in the know of like what's going on. And while I appreciated it at the beginning, probably it became overwhelming and anxiety inducing every day. Like every day I was just dreading the phone call that was coming from like the public school number. And finally one day I remember I called you and I was hysterical. And I don't even remember what happened that day. It was honestly nothing bad because they called me. One of the administrators called me and said, she's having a tough day. Something just happened. And honestly, like I can't even remember what it was now. And I just got off the phone and I just started crying. And I just kept thinking, she's at school, dysregulated, overwhelmed. They're not doing anything to help her because all they're doing is calling me. And I don't even know why they're telling me this. Now I can't perform at my job because I'm hysterically crying at 11:30 a.m. in the morning or something ridiculous like that, in the middle of my workday. And I remember I called you and I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I cannot physically finish my workday because I'm so worried about her and her being dysregulated and like, you know, how she's functioning. And I remember you just said, go get her. And I said, am I allowed to do that? She's like, she's your kid. Go get her. If you think this is not, maybe everyone needs a break. Maybe everyone just needs a break. She needs a break. Teachers need, like everyone just needs a break. And I thought, you know what? Yeah. So I did.
So there's a right. So there's a lot of things that are going on here, but that is true. And I want people to hear this because sometimes that's the best idea.
Yeah.
Now, this is, you and I are educators.
Mm-hmm.
We come from families where we went to school every day. There were no exceptions. Nobody was missing school for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
You send your kids to school every single day.
Mm-hmm.
There's no dismissals. They are not late. I mean, these kids are in school.
Yeah.
So, and that's not the case with all families. They have different opinions about school. But I know that you are like me in that, like,
oh no, she goes to school every day and she loves school.
So, right. So in that situation, you gotta, this is part of the self-care, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're sitting at home and your day's gonna be ruined anyways, then you're so anxious that you're like, my baby is so upset and not here with me. And then your day's ruined, her day's ruined. I'm like, what's gonna make you feel better? What's gonna make her feel better? Because whether or not she spends the next 2 hours in school doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So I was so glad that you went picked her up that day. Oh my God. And then the school said, you shouldn't have done that, basically.
Yeah.
And you're like, well,
and knowing now what I know, I think the school could have possibly gotten in trouble. Or if they ever called, if a school ever called and said to pick her.
That's a big problem.
That's a problem. And I think that's maybe what they were worried about because they tried to convince me while I picked her up to not pick her up. And I said, no, I'm picking her up. She's dysregulated. She's upset. And they said, well, she's fine now. And I said, well, then why didn't you call me to tell me she's fine now? Instead, I've just been, upset for the past half hour.
Yeah. And it was a boiling point. It wasn't the first day this happened. This has been like 4 weeks.
Yeah. Of just constant calls and emails.
Living in the unknowing of what was happening and what was going to happen. It's too much. It's too much for people.
And so I picked her up. I could just tell, exhausted. Like whatever had happened, she was just so tired.
This poor baby.
Yeah. So I just came home, gave her lunch, and she rested. And I was able to like confidently continue with my day because I knew she was in a safe place. She wasn't going to be dysregulated. And so it was great. And then they said, Victoria, you have to talk to the school and tell them they need to stop calling me. It's literally going to send me to a nut house.
Is that when I went in to do the observation? Is that when I was talking to them?
I think so, because you shortly after that went into. I think you might have actually called. I think you might have picked up the phone and called and said, "You need to stop calling her. If you need to, you will send an email to me.
If there's an emergency, there's an emergency. We need to know immediately.
But these are not emergency situations. These were just like she got dysregulated and was yelling at her friends in line. Why are you calling about that? Like it was things that were not emergency situations. Like there are certain things I understand hands-on situations. Yeah, call me.
Sure, seriously, call their, like, I like to be like, call their bluffs. Then go ahead and suspend her.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't want that on your permanent record. That's not a thing. That's
Right.
not a real thing.
Right. Right.
So, doesn't exist.
So you went in and observed her, and I don't know. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. First of all, I'm obsessed with this child because she is super tiny and could not be cuter. And has these like big eyes and it's so cute. It's so smart. I went to do an observation of this child who I am so enamored of because I think she is so amazing. And she's so tiny and beautiful and so funny and smart that I just look at her and I think, isn't she just so amazing? Even she's like screaming and yelling and throwing a fit. I'm like, fabulous. She's so awesome. But, you know, I get it that needed to, you know, we need to kind of address what was happening. So when I did an observation in the class and she is in the classroom, just doing her own thing, just not participating in classroom activities, really causing a problem or doing anything, you know, that really was that quote unquote bad, but also not participating with the rest of the group and what was happening. And then she had like she was prompted several times. The teachers like couldn't be lovelier. I mean, everyone is trying to help her. No, like they really were.
Yeah.
But you can only do so much when you have, 22 kids in a room or 24 kids in a room, right? She wanted to come to the rug. And then she hadn't done any of the math, but then she wanted to answer all the math questions. So that was funny.
And she knew them.
Yes. And she knows them. And she's like, well, why? I already know them. And they're like, yeah, but you're supposed to do X, Y, and Z. And she's like, no,
Don't feel like it.
I don't think so. No, thank you. So, and then it was like, everything was like, oh, get all the other kids, get up, get the computer, come back to their desk. I don't think this one's plugged in. I don't need one. How about I just don't use one, or maybe this one, or maybe no, not that one. Or how about I just stand here and plug the rest of them in? And like, what is she like? So, and then my, was so amazing. We're gonna go out for recess, which is so awesome. And recess is a wild, unstructured time. So you never know what's gonna happen out of recess. And really was pretty mild. There wasn't really much going on. But our friend is very into wolves. And she has a stuffed wolf. And she is into wolf dynamics and wolf packs. And, she is just taking a strong personal interest in wolves. And she likes to play wolfpack. And she was playing wolfpack outside, and she was leading a group of 20 children in come over here. No, stand over here. No, let's go up here. Wolves don't do that. I mean, the leadership skills. And the kids were fun, and everyone was like totally thoroughly enjoying it. There were some moments of some growling and howling that were, outside of the realm, I think, of typical. But she was very happy. She was very, very content to be doing what she was doing.
Yeah.
It was also a good opportunity for me to kind of see her in full action without a ton of adult prompting. And this is where kind of some of the female autism stuff comes up, because you are wondering, so we have all this, we have the rigidity and we have the overstimulation, but we also have these like very interesting deep areas of deep personal interest, which you find often in children who have autism will develop a very strong personal interest in a specific topic. As a special education teacher, I have listened to many, many hours of lectures on karate, dinosaurs, wrestling. I've had a number of karate demonstrations, models of dinosaurs, discussing different dinosaurs in depth, what they eat, where they go, where they live. So this wolf interest was reminiscent of that for me. And I thought this was kind of at the beginning of me doing what now has been a real deep dive into girls and autism.
Yeah.
This is a really fascinating topic, and we can talk, that could be its own separate episode or several, like a whole series on that, because it is very interesting. And And then she came in and that was it. And all of the teachers in the hallway and certainly principal, they were like, we love her, but she's hard to handle. She's wild. And I'm like, okay, well, this is not that complicated. She needs more support in the classroom because the teacher is in charge of everybody in the classroom. When she's doing her one-off thing, the teacher can't do her one-off thing and teach the class at the same time. That's what the school is struggling with. This is a school resource problem.
Yeah.
They need an additional person in that classroom. And not that she requires a one-to-one aid. They just require an additional adult to support what's happening here.
And there was an additional adult in the classroom, but that adult was there specifically for another child.
But also not full-time,
and not full-time.
And then,
because that child's not in that room full-time.
Right.
And so that adult is for that other child. So they're not there for my daughter. They're there for that specific other.
And that child, I think it's pulled out to go to other classes.
Correct.
And the aid goes with the child. So then the
Yeah.
teacher is still left with a large group of children, and she's the only adult in the room.
Yeah.
And it just isn't enough.
No.
And
and her teacher was like, when I say is amazing, like she is the exact person you would want for your first grade child. Like,
and over the years,
just
I have
amazing.
come to realize that
But she's one person.
elementary school teachers that are especially very, very good elementary school teachers, I think they're like born. Like
Yes.
this.
Oh no, she was born to be
You're
a
not
teacher.
you're not made to be
Nope.
like this because it's like a very, very special person with a very special skill set. And the level of patience and kindness and just,
forgiveness
endless compassion. Was not mad a minute of time during any about her.
No.
Any of these children could do. She was just like, well, she's having fun. She did all these amazing things.
Yeah.
So she was just a huge champion for her, which I love to see so much.
Yeah.
And I remember, and I'm jumping a little bit around, but I remember in the meeting being like, well, she can't do all of this.
Yeah.
Like the school team was starting to be like, well, the teacher needs to. I'm like, no. Let's get real
When
for a
we were
minute.
talking about the accommodations and everything, it was like, well, who's going to be doing all these things for her? Because this teacher is one teacher. And I am realistic in the sense where I know that like it's hard when you have multiple kids with multiple needs in one classroom. And yeah, it was really hard.
Yeah, it was not working.
Yeah.
And then, so, sometimes school districts just have to they look at me like, what do you want us to do about it? I'm like, dude, this is your job.
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do you want me to do about it? Like, put an aid in there.
Yeah.
I don't have any. Find one. Find one. Look for the budget. Where else should you spend your money? I don't care.
Yeah.
Or we go to an out-of-district placement, which costs a lot of money too. So how about we just put an aid in the classroom that benefits everybody, keeps her in the least restrictive environment, and call it a day?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems kind of obvious to me sometimes what needs to happen.
And I think that's what, because I was getting all these calls from administration, and because again, these calls weren't from the teacher, they were from the administration. And I'm hearing all these endless accounts and reports, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, she's going to have to be placed out of district. That's how bad this is. And then when it was all said and done, the accommodations and the services she's getting, which we can talk about in a second, are not that out of the ordinary. And then when I kind of talked about it with someone, they were like, why would you think she had to be outplaced? I'm like, because I thought it was that bad. Because I'm so in a silo, even though you kept telling me it's not that bad. She's fine. She's really smart. She's going to be okay. We're just going to have to get her a little bit of help and some support. And I'm like, but I'm just thinking worst case scenario.
Well,
and I think that's normal.
You were also told that.
Yeah.
So you didn't come up with this on your own.
No.
They were literally calling you every day.
They were calling me every day, telling me she was out of control.
Yeah, swinging from the chandelier.
Yeah,
every day.
every day.
So,
which spoiler alert, she wasn't.
Right. So, and I've always been very good. I'm like, I've done a bazillion, which is the number.
Yes, that is an
observations. And I never know what I'm going to find, but it's always interesting. And I was like, this is it. This is all we got going on here. Yeah. I mean, let her run a wolf pack. Who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fine. Every recess. Yeah. Let's not overreact here, people.
Right.
But let's react in a way that is appropriate.
Right.
What's happening.
Yeah.
So, all right.
So then when we had the meeting.
Did we have a couple?
Well, yes, because we had the one and then.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So So we had the one meeting. It was over Zoom. And it was pretty much everything. There were no surprises. Like there was nothing that I got back because at this point now it's November. I think it was the week after Thanksgiving that it was like a while.
Yeah.
Like
45 days.
It's 45 days. They feel like a long
Yeah.
45 days when
It's
you're
45
going through
school
it.
days, too,
45
right?
school days.
So it is a long time.
It's long. And because we started the process at the end of September, I think I signed the paperwork.
Yeah. But we were on it. So there were no surprises because we were on it every step of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is like, I want to get to detail level of
Yes.
exactly what is happening.
Yeah. So you took into account all of the stuff from the psychologist. We kept every single email that the school was sending home because that was the other thing too. Whenever they would call, we were like, put it in writing because we need to keep it for our record. These
Yeah.
calls are not helping us with like our record keeping and like when she's dysregulated, like what time of the day are these usually happening? Like just trying to
Yes.
keep records of
It's called
everything.
data, people.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to know, in schools wants to talk about data, but then the kid is like bothering an adult. And so you get a phone call. And then there's no way for us to track the data of that.
Right.
And also, it gives, schools an out. Oh, well, that's not really what I said. No, put it in writing.
Put it in writing.
Timestamp it.
Yeah.
Tell me exactly what you want to say about it.
Mhm.
Because that works for both of us and the child.
Yes. And I used to respond to the email at first with like, oh my goodness, no, that's so bad. I'll talk to her. And then it eventually just became, thank you, received, like, because I just couldn't do it anymore. But so we got the results back from everything. And like I said, there were no surprises. They were like, certainly we see like ADHD, we see anxiety, like we see all these traits whenever they brought up ASD level 1. Again, these are not surprises because my psychologist had already been kind of prepping me for it, I think. And then, then they got to the academic part and they're like, she's so smart. Like her reading, her comprehension, her verbal skills, her writing are like
Advanced.
They said gifted. I think it's actually in the
and she
paperwork.
hasn't been doing any schoolwork, so this is all natural.
But like this is because, and then that day that she wouldn't do the math, she knew the answers. She just didn't want to do it because she was like, it's easy. And she said to me before, I don't like math because it's just addition and subtraction and I'm bored. I'm like, wow. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So so like there were no surprises. What I wanted to get out of it was I felt like the school was being very reactive to her dysregulation and outbursts and not being proactive. Right. Yeah. And I wanted her to have like a place where she could go, like a PT, where she could go, like do something with her
OT,
hands.
sensory wash.
OT, not PT, OT.
And we talked about this. And I would say to you, they can see this coming. There have to be signs that she is escalating.
Yes.
And they can learn to identify the signs that she's escalating. And that's when you step in. You don't step in 2 minutes into a tantrum.
Because there's no, I know her.
Then
And there's no way to.
No intervention.
No.
And time.
So we did not get the OT. I remember that because she didn't qualify. That was annoying, according to them.
Does she have it now?
No. But we had said we would go back and we felt like she needed it.
She had an OT toolbox. Yeah, they probably heard of that.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with OTs
Mm-hmm.
because it's so helpful for little kids, all the cool stuff that they have. But they are spread thin and, they're used differently in different districts.
Yeah.
There's like one for, thousands of kids.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. We don't always get it. But,
Yeah. She sees like the school psychologist a couple times a week.
But I think she has an OT toolbox, a sensory toolbox.
She does. I think she has like things that she can do.
Which is probably good enough. Right?
Yeah. She has her classroom. And I think a lot of the classrooms in the school have like a quiet corner, like a calm down kind of corner where she can kind of hang out. And she's been getting very good about advocating for herself and going there. When she's overwhelmed, that is still something that we're working on because I'm still working on that in our house. Like her room is supposed to be her place where she can kind of go, not be with her brothers. And it doesn't always work out that way.
Sure.
Sometimes I have to remind her several times. Like, I think you need a minute.
What does she say?
And she's like, I didn't what? And I'm like, I think you're dysregulated. And she goes, what? They're dysregulated. I'm like, this, what you're feeling right now? I said, all that stuff you've got in you, you feel all bottled up and you just want to go crazy. I said, that's, you need to calm down. And she's been doing better. Like she'll now like, feel like, I think I need to go calm down. I'm like, I think that's a great idea. Because it's like, it's just that the rigidity, rigidness, whatever is still there. It's like, but it's getting better.
Do you want to talk a little bit about medications? And you don't have to be specific about them, but there were some medications that you were trialing and what that was like and how she was reacting to them.
So we first started with guanfacine, which is like, I feel like that's very safe for kids. It's an ADHD medication and it supposedly like helps a little bit with anxiety.
Medicine?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
But it helps with ADHD symptoms and anxiety. It doesn't have any serotonin in it or anything like that. And you kind of take it like as needed. It's not something that like you have to have in your system, like it builds up or anything like that. I think at first I was like, it's working, but I don't think it was working. So then we had chatted and it was last Thanksgiving break. Before that, we had chatted with the psychologist and she said, did you want to try a stimulant? And I said, we can try, like, right? Like that might be good because she's so like, ha, ha, ha. Like, I don't know how to describe her, just kind of all over the place. So I thought maybe a stimulant would work and it would help control her like emotions and everything during school. And so she said, well, we wouldn't try it on a school day. We would try it on a Saturday, like on the weekend where, you can watch her for symptoms. And I don't even know what the stimulant was, to be honest. We gave it to her and she had the worst reaction, like ticking, couldn't stop talking, like, and she was scared and she didn't know what was happening.
And she's voicing that to you too. Wasn't she? Like, I'm scared.
Yeah.
I'm not okay, right?
Yeah. She's like, I'm not okay. Like she was ticking, her hands were ticking, her eyes were ticking, like blinking like crazy. She was doing like a weird like tick thing with her mouth too. And like, it was awful. And I called the psychologist for like an emergency, like visit, like over the phone. And cause it was a Saturday night and she luckily got on the call with us and was like, okay, like the good thing about stimulants is they're salt based, which I didn't know. So she was like, she's going to pee it out.
Short acting.
It's short acting, like give her tons of fluid to try to flush it out. So we gave her tons of fluid. We were with her like all night. And we just tried to like, just kind of calm her down and let her know that she's okay and she's going to be okay. And it was like a scary couple of hours, like towards, the really later evening, we saw that she was kind of coming down from it, but she was still ticking, which was really scary. By the next morning, all the tics were gone and she was really back to her normal self. And we had decided with a psychologist that, it's having ADHD and anxiety are kind of like chicken and the egg. It's like, what causes the AD, like, does anxiety cause the ADHD or does ADHD cause the anxiety or whatever? And so she said, I think we need to treat the anxiety before anything else. Like maybe she just needs like a serotonin boost. And so, that's what we decided to do. And so since November, she's been on medication.
And it's been successful.
And
no more scary trials.
No more scary trials. We're not ever going to do a stimulant.
No, right.
I don't think that's for her.
Right. No, especially not as a child.
Right.
It could be different when she's an adult, but I mean, that's probably good. I mean, we're good for now.
Yeah.
We're not doing that again.
Yeah.
And those drugs are not always, they're not always safe or made for children.
No.
Not all of them.
Yeah.
And a lot of kids are fine on them, but there is this risk and that's why they tell you about it. And it's a good thing you were like obviously watching her so closely and acted swiftly.
Yeah.
Because that can happen. Can you talk a little bit about and I want you to tell the story because it was one of the things that was like the most moving to me because I just felt so bad for her. And I remember, we had a few conversations about me being like, she's not a bad kid. She's not being bad. She is struggling.
Mm-hmm.
She is having a hard time. And they are reporting to you that her behavior is bad.
Mm-hmm.
But really what's happening is this child is in crisis. It's just really struggling. And you're like, all right, that is helpful to reframe it like that.
Yeah.
Now you were like, because you were kind of like mad at her, like, why don't you just behave yourself?
Yeah.
And then I was like, no, that's not how. And you're like, oh, okay. But when she was coming home, she was coming home on the bus,
Mm-hmm.
and she was asleep.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. She was coming home on the bus several times. I mean, there was a period, it was shortly after all of the testings and everything. And you can tell she's trying so hard at school to like conform to
Keep it
what,
together.
to keep it together to what a neurotypical child is supposed to act like. And so she would fall asleep on the bus every day. And she was just so tired because in her mind, I can't even imagine what it's like for her all day long to be thinking like, okay, well, I have to act this way, but I don't want to act this way because I'm really mad about this. And then, oh, I want to do this and I'm bored with this. And I want, like, it's just, I can't imagine the mental gymnastics that she goes through.
And the energy it takes
Yeah.
for her to exert this control over
Mhm.
herself. And she's little. She's still a
Yeah.
little kid. And didn't the bus driver have to be like,
Yeah. Yeah. I would have to go in and get her and pick her up because like obviously the bus drivers are not allowed to touch the kids and pick them up or like even wake them up. Like they're not even allowed to like touch them to wake them up. So he would be calling her name and she still wouldn't wake up. And so I would have to go in and scoop her up and bring her in. And then, but she just looked and she does. So now she doesn't come home tired like that anymore. Not to that point, but she still is tired when she gets home from school. She needs a lot of, like downtime when she comes home. Like she needs to like watch a couple shows, like sit by the TV, have a snack, like really just kind of like decompress from the day, which isn't so different from my other child who has pretty severe anxiety. Like when he was coming home from school, he would have to do that similar. Like, and he still does. Like all my kids do. They really need like that decompression time. Like they're not going to be the type of kids who get home and be like, well, I have homework, so let's get out my assignment book.
What kids do you think?
I don't know. Apparently, because my friend has a kid like that, and I'm like, that there's children that do that.
I'm not familiar with it.
I didn't realize children like that existed.
And also,
Apparently,
there are also some kids who need to go to sports and run a rep for 1 or 2 hours.
Yes,
and just run it off.
Yeah. Oh, and she doesn't get tired. Like she was up last night at 11. Just like chatting away. And I'm like, why are you up? And this is after melatonin. I mean, that her mind is going all the time. And it takes so much for her mind to shut down to sleep. It's like, and I'm similar in that way.
I am too.
I was diagnosed with ADHD last year.
All of these things that you say about her, it's always been like that sounds like me.
Sounds like me. And so now I get it. I've had to
sure. Nobody was taking.
No one was taking us to get diagnosed in the 80s and 90s.
Back to like what was your original inclination that you might have anxiety?
Yeah,
and you're like, I was a kid.
Yeah,
and nobody knew about it. Was talking about it.
No.
So I guess it's good that we are, attempting to do more early intervention.
Yeah.
We'll see in 20 years.
Yeah.
How well we did.
I hope so. I hope like she'll have more coping skills and like she's already learning so much.
She already she has already learned a ton and is doing such an amazing job.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience at her IEP meeting?
Can I tell the story?
Please do.
Okay. So best story was we had these lovely conversations with all the people who had done the testing and everyone said very similar things that, they would say, this is what we found, X, Y, and Z for whenever, whether it was the academic, the OT, oh my God, what were the other testings? Like
just psych, academic,
OT,
and
then something else too. I thought. I don't know. But there was like four people that were like kind of contributing to this conversation. And it was,
the special ed teacher, general ed teacher,
yeah,
school psychologist.
school psychologist. And everyone was just lovely. Like everyone kept saying similar things, which was just like, this is what we found. Like, but she is funniest little girl. Like, she's so, like, they always had something positive to say, which I know they probably have to do that. But like, it made me feel good. Like, Victoria's shaking her head. No, that's not how it always goes. But they were saying so many positive things. It made me feel so much better about like everything. And so it was wonderful in that sense. So I was like, we are really getting somewhere. So then we started talking about like accommodations and services. And then once we started talking about services, Victoria said, well, who's going to do some of this stuff? Because we have one teacher in the classroom and she cannot be doing all of these things that we're saying, because like it was a laundry list of things. And they said, well, she's going to be pulled out to see the school psychologist, blah, blah, blah. And then it was like, okay, but like, how is she going to do all these other things?
So far, we've got an IQ of 15 minutes of service to go leave.
Right.
Like,
so
where are we going to move on to actual?
Yeah. So she said, like, I think there needs to be another teacher, or we need to, and the special ed coordinator said her services will depend on our staffing. And I thought Victoria's eyes were going to bug out of her head. And I knew that was wrong, because I come from education. So I was like, doesn't sound right. And Victoria's eyes were like bugged out over Zoom, just like,
and I'm looking at everything else on the screen like, is anyone saying? Is this just me? It's me. I'm the one that has to address this.
So she says, no, that's not how that works.
It's the law. As a matter of fact,
I think
that's federal law.
I think you actually said like, that's illegal. Your staffing will depend on what accommodations need to be and her need. And they kind of backpedaled, and I can't remember, but then they still kind of said, well, staffing is an issue. And immediately you were just like, I think you guys need to take some more time to get your act together. You said it in a way that was like, get your ish together, but not swearing, but like, get your stuff together. Like, we're going to give you some more time to get together.
Get a better
plan together is, I think, what you said. We're going to let you guys have that time to get a better plan together. And we're going to hop off the call. Eileen, hang up now. And I was like, and I like hung up immediately. And then, you called me and you were like, no. And so we ended up having to have,
I think we
were going to have a second meeting, but did we ever
and
have
this is why, maybe I'm not very good at business. I do think I am good at what I do, but I'm like, these are paying me money to sit here and do this.
Yeah.
And you are wasting everybody's time and now their money by not coming to the table with some better suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
And you want the team to predetermine, and you want to wait for it to be team recommendations. You can't just sit there and say, we don't have any solutions other than 15 minutes a week with a school psychologist.
Right.
Because I'm like, wait, what? I'm sorry, what's happening?
Yeah.
And also, you know what? How about, I can't listen to get list of accommodations for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
You're just clicking boxes on Easy IEP or EastFed. Just send them to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that what they ended up doing was they sent it to us and they said, well, we can meet. They did give us a little bit more. Now I can't remember what they gave us. There was something that we were not too happy about, and then they ended up giving it to us.
More time with the
more time
teacher. But that's really the only thing that she needed to function in the classroom, is that she's covered by two people in the room. She does not require one-to-one.
Right.
At times, she may need to have some individual attention, because, oh my God, wait, I left the part out about when she had to use the bathroom when I was doing the observation. I mean, this child is my favorite child in the whole entire world. She's like, I have to go to the bathroom. Everyone's like, okay. And she is in there she is talking and she is singing, and then she's washing her hands, and then she's trying different soaps, and then she's trying different things. And I normally don't interact with the children when I'm doing observations, but sometimes it's hard to control myself because I want to so bad.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, what are you doing in here? I'm just washing my hands. And I'm like, are you going to wrap it up soon and get back to class? Yeah, in a minute. And then she went back to class. When she needs to give herself a little break, no, she can't be by herself because she's a first grader. So somebody does need to be with her, and that can't be her classroom teacher.
Right.
No, nor should it be.
Yeah.
Schools need, so much more support.
Oh my gosh.
Than they have or
Yeah.
that they're able to offer. But because it didn't really take much to turn this from a crisis into a success story. And I don't think it ever needed to be a crisis.
Right.
But I do think that, we talk a lot about this process that mothers go through and that I kind of like navigate with mothers frequently, as is the nature of the work, where you're going through this process where you thought your child was like this, and now there's all this new behavior, and now your child is presenting like something else, and there's obviously a lot of feelings involved with that. Like, and the scary ones are literally you're afraid for your child, you're sad for your child, you're worried about your child. And in the school, folks, I think go through a process, but they are not this child's parents. But the school folks are going through a process of this behavior's ramping up. We don't know what to do about it. So they're doing a little freaking out on their own. We're not sure. They're human beings. They're not always sure how to handle this. They don't know. Are they over-reporting? Are they under-reporting? Are they violating the law? Are they not doing enough? Are they doing too much? Like, it's tough. I get it. And not just because we don't know the inner workings of what was happening with the staff, like at that school, because we don't work there. But I've worked in enough schools to know that there sometimes can be a lot of discussions about like, are we handling this correctly?
Right.
And sometimes that kind of over communicating can come from a good place, but can also, is definitely not best practice.
Right.
And I think that if, school teams can avoid doing their own freak out, that'd be really helpful for parents, because then they're just kind of passing on their own nervousness and anxiety about, what's happening to this kid, what's happening in my school, how does this reflect on me as a professional? That I think is likely the cause of, some of the freaking out about, mild behaviors.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, as a parent, it's like, I don't want to say you're like mourning, but like you are like, it's really sad to like get some of these diagnoses, because you're like, the life you envisioned for your child is not going to be the way you envisioned it. It's going to have a few more obstacles. And when your kid hurts, you hurt. And it hurts. It hurts to see them struggling. It hurts to see them dysregulated. It hurts to see people not understand them. I mean, she was kicked off a sports team because of unsafe behaviors, quote unquote, rolling around in the grass because she was basically like stimming. And, it looked like she wasn't paying attention, but she was, because she knew, following directions, she knew everything she was supposed to know without saying what the team was. And ultimately what it came down to was adults didn't want to deal with her because she's difficult. And we see this in friends. We see this in family, and it's really sad. It's very isolating. I don't think people realize how small your village gets when your kids have these diagnoses, but then the village that you have, you're like, yeah, these are the people.
Yeah.
Like, like Victoria's my people. It gets smaller, but it gets better in a sense.
And I want to add two things. I mean, please say more about all this, but one is that it is grieving. There is a grieving process, and we talk about this as professionals. And I think that, this is something that I heard about early on, and it really resonated with me. That when people are envisioning, when you deal with children who have difficulty with behavior, you have to read their behavior as a message. What is this message? So if a child has a huge temper tantrum, some of the behavior people say, that was a big message. And when you're, this is new to people. These are not people in the biz. These are, parents who come from all types of backgrounds, and they are not behavior experts. But we do talk about this young child, what happens when you have a young child and you thought you had a typical child, and then at some point you realize this is not going to be a typical child. And then you are mourning the loss of the typical child that you thought you had. Mm-hmm. And I think more, research and talk should be done about that. In almost in some ways, not super specifically, but in general terms, my whole goal for this is to create a community where people can come, especially when they're in this beginning stage and they think, oh my God, I'm not going to have any more friends. This kid isn't going to have any more friends. I am the only mother. This terrible, bad mother was to sit alone and not tell anybody what's happening. And every single mother that I talk to says, I know this is awful. I'm so sorry to tell you this. And I'm like, after a while, it occurred to me, I'm like, everybody really does think that they're the only person that this is happening to.
No.
And I'm the one that knows that I sit and I have these long conversations with the people that I work with, and they're usually mothers. And I was having the same conversations over and over again. And I was realizing how beneficial I thought these individual conversations that I was having with one mother could be to lots of mothers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's the whole goal here with this podcast, is that people listen to it and say, oh, I'm not the only one. I think, which is powerful.
Yeah. I think it's really powerful. It's the only way I've gotten through like half of my life is just connecting with people, when you go through hard times, and just knowing that you're not alone. And, and having the background that I have in education, I think logically I knew I wasn't alone, but it's really hard to think like a logical person when it's your kid. And I think now looking back on my teaching days and like seeing parents so upset in meetings, and I'm like, why don't I know that? Like,
Right.
I probably didn't fully understand it. And now I'm like, wow, like I get it. Like it's so hard to be on that end. Even when you are knowledgeable and have that background, it's still hard because
Well, it changes the way you view it, right?
it does.
So I worked on the school side for 20 years. And if I would be in a meeting with a parent who's super angry, but I'm not taking their anger personally. I'm empathizing with them. I'm connecting with them because I'm
Right.
saying, I understand your anger. I understand this is scary. And I am here to walk you through this.
Mhm.
Even if I'm working for the school district.
Yeah.
I am still here to walk you through this. That's what school district people are supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
It changes that from, oh my God, that mother was so angry and so mean to me.
Mhm.
Because it changes the dynamic between you and the parent, but it also changes the dynamic of the whole meeting. And then also you get that parent's trust. And once you can see what you thought was, oh my God, they're being so mean to me, that this parent is distressed.
Yeah.
It changes that too. And if you can, earn their trust and they believe you and they think you're somebody who like maybe can help and maybe knows what they're talking about,
Mhm.
like what you're talking about, then, you're not in this full tug of war with parents. And I think that that's why making this switch over to do what I'm doing now is so easy for me. And what I want to talk to school people about doing, and what I did when I, managed large groups of team chair people, is that this is not about you. This mother is not mad at you.
Yeah. I'm sure if we were to interview the admin who had to deal with me last fall, they would probably think, oh yeah, she was really bad. She was really dysregulated herself. And I was, because it's just, it's such an isolating thing. People, and I've talked to people since then, and little things. I was talking to one of my really good friends, and she said, that her daughter was really struggling with reading, and that, she's like, I've mentioned, an IEP to the teacher a few times, but nothing's been going on. And I said, you have to email like the person who handles the IEP at the school, which could be an assistant principal, it could be a principal, it could be whoever it is at the school. They usually designate someone, right? And then they have like a special ed director for the district and then special ed coordinators, this whole thing. I said, it's a process and you have to formally request it. She's like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Like just the average person just doesn't even know how to get started.
And not just that, but then for whatever reason, people are embarrassed to say, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they're embarrassed, because why would you know how to do this?
No, there's never step-by-step instructions. You have, again, I come from the education world and I still didn't know what to do. I think I called you. I was like, what do I do? And then I think I emailed someone from the school and I was like, how do I get this started? And they were great. They were like, okay, you have to email this person. I'm like, great. CC this person. Fantastic. And I said, I'm going to be using an advocate. And they said, great. Like, great. We're glad you're using, they were actually very supportive of it.
Well, it can be helpful because it can be helpful for a lot of reasons, I think. Number one, I don't think any parent should go into a meeting by themselves. When you have 5 people who work the school district and who are also experts in this process at the table, and you are by yourself, you are losing. And you are lucking out if it goes your way and you get everything you're entitled to.
Well, even like what happened in our meeting when we were told her services would depend on staffing. I think I knew that didn't sound right. But if I'm going to be honest, I probably wouldn't have hung up right there. I probably would have been like, okay, tell me more.
Yeah.
Because I would be trying to be nice. And, I see these people in my community for various reasons.
Sure.
And so like, you're just like, okay, like I'm trying to be nice and I don't know. But the average person, if someone said that to them, they wouldn't know that that's not how
They'd be like,
supposed to be.
I understand.
They think, I understand.
Because,
staffing's tough, which it is. I'm not.
Yeah, but also too bad.
Yeah.
Like life's tough, figure it out.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the rest of the school year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How'd it go?
Great. I think like very minimal calls home. Actually, I have a funny story. She did get a call home in the spring. Not a call. It was an email. And it was like, she got in trouble today. She had to be spoken to today. Not in trouble. They said she had to be spoken to today because she was doing someone else's work for them. Because
she's a tutor.
She went on this kiddo's laptop and was doing their work for them for, I think it was math and one of the math programs that they use. And she was doing it to get her friend to another level of the like math game because she wanted her at the same level, and quote unquote, she was taking too long. Her friend was taking too long. And so I had to kind of like I said, oh, okay. I talked to my daughter when she got home and I said, you really can't be doing other kids' work. Like they have to take the time to learn that. And she said, she was just taking way too long. And I really wanted her up to where it was. And I was like, oh, okay. And so we talked, it didn't happen again. So it's just like little, and she's still a kid. Like she's still going to make mistakes. Like a tiny kid. She's in first grade. But we did like a behavior chart every day. So she would come home. It was like color coded. If she got greens, that was like an awesome day. A yellow was like maybe had a little bit of trouble, but nothing crazy. And a red was obviously really bad. And honestly, I don't even know. She might have gotten maybe one red. And that was towards the beginning of all the behavior charts and services and accommodations being put into place. It was mostly greens. And then sometimes she would get a purple, which means she went above and beyond to do something nice without getting and she would get lots of purple.
Was that at school and in conjunction with home or
just at school?
Just at school.
Yeah.
Pretty decent.
And so it honestly, the rest of the school year was like, so like, I wasn't anxious every day. I was like never expecting phone calls again. Like it just never happened. And like occasionally I'd get, the school psychologist would send emails occasionally of like how she's doing, how she's progressing and all that stuff. And so I was, communicated with. It's not like communication stopped, but it was not the over communication.
Right. Because the problem got solved, really.
The problem got solved. Yeah.
And then camp.
Yes. So she's at a camp in our town, which is run by the town.
Just a regular camp.
Like it's just a regular camp. It's basically like someone said the other day, it's a get your kids out of the house for the day camp. And I'm like, that's exactly what
I think that's what all camps are.
Well, it's not like a specific,
Right.
it's not like a soccer
Yeah.
camp or what. It's just like a camp. And so they do some sports, they do some arts and crafts, they, sometimes watch a movie, they walk down to a slush cart, they they have a cooking class come in, which is that's actually really fun too. So they just do so many really great things. And I told the director that, she had these diagnoses and that I was a little nervous for her to go because I wasn't sure having, new surroundings, new kids to be around. I mean, she is so friendly. She can make a best friend anywhere. And she'll say, oh, that's my new best friend. And I'm like, what's her name? And she's like, well, I don't know. So she will literally make a best friend anywhere. So I wasn't necessarily worried about her making friends. It was more of just, are people going to understand her? And is she going to have is she going to be really dysregulated because there's just so much going on? And it has been wonderful.
Amazing.
They are just like, oh, she wants to go into the little kid room and help out. Cool. Oh, okay. She's done playing sports because she's just done. Cool. She can come in and do a craft.
And you were just telling me before this, and I just want to add it because again, we are all one. We're going outside today. We know you don't like it because it's hot. She made it out 5 minutes and was like, it's too hot. Gotta go back inside.
Gonna go back inside. And I was like, oh, she didn't make it outside the whole time, did she? They're like, nope.
Nor would I have.
I didn't think she would.
Go inside and sit down and get crafted. Here, you just play or run around outside with other little sticky first graders.
And that's her thing is she really likes to work individually on things. And she doesn't mean, this was kind of a breakthrough. I didn't even tell you about this. She was at camp. And when she likes to work on things individually, she really likes to work on things individually. And so she was working on some sort of craft or some sort of, honestly, I don't even remember what she was doing, but she was doing something. And she was just doing that by herself. And a boy came up and said, oh, can I play with you? And she was like, oh, I really just kind of want to be by myself. And she said it nicely.
Yeah.
And I guess boy called her a name and he started crying because he was sensitive or whatever. And then so she started crying because she felt bad because she made him cry, which is so different because I think I feel like a year ago, she would have just been like, no, get away from me. I'm just for myself. And would have really yelled at him.
Yeah.
And would have been kind of mean and wouldn't have cared.
Yeah.
And I feel like I picked her up and she was still crying from it.
Aww.
And she said, I just feel so bad. I feel like I hurt his feelings. And I said, well, we just do better tomorrow.
Yeah.
And maybe try to include him. And she's like, I really
want
to be by myself.
Right.
And
or maybe not, Mom.
Well, and that's okay to want to be by yourself. And having boundaries with people is important. If you don't want to be around that, if you don't really want to be by yourself, it's really good to advocate for yourself and say, I really want to be by myself right now.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I also feel like one of the keys to solving this problem was that I think that she felt misunderstood.
Yeah.
And that she was smart enough to realize that she was misunderstood.
Yes.
And once she felt like people were understanding her better, a lot of the symptoms went away.
Yes.
Because she was less frustrated.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And literally she's going to be in 2nd grade next year. And think about the progress she's already made.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big deal. She's a little person, a little human being.
Yeah.
And she's already learned so much and made so much progress that, we're not end of 1st grade means you have all your skills for life. I mean, you're trying to integrate all of these other skills, maybe working with other people and being accepting of that is a 3rd grade skill.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
Because I think some of this is going to be, she is self-directed by nature, strongly independent, strongly internally driven.
Yeah.
And some of this is going to have to come from her internal needs and desires to be ready to do whatever it is somebody's asking her to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure.
You're
It's been a pleasure working with you, and thank you for introducing me to that child who I'm, think is just the greatest. And it was such an interesting and important case to work on. And I can't wait to see where we are in 2, 5, and 10 years.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to Laugh, Cry, IEP with Victoria Crisp. We hope it has given you inspiration and a sense that you are not alone. In fact, we'd love to have you join the Laugh, Cry, IEP community on Facebook. It's a free group for moms like you. You can also learn how to work with Victoria in the group or on her website, crispeducationadvising.com. Both links are in the show notes for you. Until next time, please share the show with your friends or anyone you think may need this message. And remember, we are always on your side.